A couple weeks ago, you probably saw a video by InvaderWist exposing a situation between the two of us involving overdose. If you have not seen his video, that should be okay because I'm going to cover the whole situation and go through his video in this one. I want to be completely transparent that I believe that in this video, Wist believes he is telling the truth. He really means what he's saying, from the overdose all the way to the evil Minecraft parody of it. But this isn't exactly an apology video because just about every assumption he makes misses the mark or is wrong, and I don't blame him. The situation is almost funny in how I was just as blind to Wist's side of the story as he was to mine. Sounds pretty bold, doesn't it? Might not seem that way by the end of this video. Just as Wist has, I'm going to tell what I genuinely believe to be the truth. Mistakes were made on my end, and Wist, I mean you no malice. I understand why it's come to this. Also, this response is 2 weeks late because I flew to England roughly 20 minutes after his video dropped. You may have seen me replying to comments, and just know I hadn't seen Wist's video at the time. I was completely talking from memory and did not have access to the evidence that I now have. The story starts with some definite mistakes, but as it goes on becomes more and more warped. I have very strong evidence later in the video when we get to the infamous scene, so don't write this off too soon, pretty please. With that out of the way, hello, if you've been waiting to hear my side, I'm Tristan Bakon of the similarly titled YouTube channel you're watching. If you're one of the pesky drama goons, this is your evil underdog speaking, and I'm sorry, but I do not think this franchise is getting a threequel. 2 weeks ago, InvaderWist brought to light a situation that started 2 years ago involving my silly Minecraft story project called Cosmic Crime. What is my history with Wist? He explained it just fine in his video, but quickly, him and I were a part of a community that did Minecraft hardcore content, and he almost always featured in my videos. To fit the story of Cosmic Crime, I wanted the cast to be diverse, friends from past, present, and future who didn't necessarily know each other going into the game playing together. I very much wanted Wist because he was one of my old friends I hadn't spoken to in a couple years, and I knew he'd bring a unique, chaotic playstyle to his character, and
it was an idea that I was really excited for.
Here's some quick context before I get into how things went down. Late April 2022, I began working on this project. I was going off to college in September, so I thought if I commit all my time that I wasn't eating and sleeping to making this thing, I'd have this big, ambitious story series thing out on the internet before I leave home. Every day, weekends included, I was brainstorming, drawing, building, writing constantly. Scheduling was super tight, and there was only one day I could have all 12 people totally free to record, and that was... I got very little sleep that night, and boy, was it ever a task to keep everyone situated. I felt like the hacker man in a movie with all the monitors as I was scrambling to get everyone in the call and the game, make sure mine and 10 other people's OBS was working, replay mod was recording properly, everybody's mics weren't too loud or too quiet for everyone else. I'm getting DM'd, mods aren't working, people are in the chat, running around, placing blocks, breaking blocks, 5 fellas talking at once, asking me questions, I'm running commands, I'm double, triple checking, okay, you get it. Where is Wist? In the midst of all this, I get the message from Wist.
Okay, so something serious might have happened. I don't know when the situation is going to calm down, so I don't know if I'll be able to make it because I don't want to push the season back further.
I then reply, dude, you have to get on, you promised me. Then you can see me realize that was frankly brash as hell and ask, what happened, man, IRL or what? I had no idea what was going on. I'm used to the typical showing up to a recording and someone says last minute, oh, my mom is yelling at me to visit my grandma, gotta go. But it clearly wasn't that. It could have been anything, but it was serious, and my reply was disrespectful, and I own that. I do also think that if I was ever going to reply to something so hastily and rudely, it would be in this moment of panic and stress considering the total sensory overload of organizing everything all at once. So next is the real kicker. I had a headache, so I went downstairs to get my usual headache medicine, and we only had 100 milligrams, when I'm supposed to take 800 milligrams. I took 6 at once, trying to reach 800 milligrams, and that puts me at risk of an overdose. And I famously reply, okay, so when are you hopping on, you think? Sorry, this is dire. What is this guy thinking? Truly, this is a smoking gun, right? I mean, this is bad, but let me explain my thinking. I read this message at Mach 50 and recalled him briefly mentioning his usual headaches before, so I thought, oh, it's just his ibuprofen, and only 800 milligrams at that. So we arrive at a massive miscommunication here. A lot of people have said that I dragged my friend who was on the brink of death into my Minecraft series, but I knew in that moment he was not in danger. You might say, well, Bakon, you're not a doctor, but these are over-the-counter drugs, very accessible and pretty safe for a reason. You have to really screw up to hurt yourself, and that's by design. I totally get the stigma around medicine, right? Don't mess with it, it's not candy. 800 milligrams is 2 adult extra strengths. Imagine how many people, and especially children, would be hospitalized or dead if all it took was downing 6 100 milligram pills. Some of you have probably had a moment where you go, I'm in a lot of pain, I'm gonna take some extra pills. It's very common and sometimes leads to a stomachache. I'm not advocating for taking more than the the recommended dose, just to be clear. You just don't see Jesus for a misdemeanor like this. Now, all of what I just said might sound a little cold, and that was the problem. I was so wired in this moment that I read this and my takeaway was just, oh, false alarm. Thank God. Let's move on. I rapidly bang out that message and then it hits me, oh wait, he's really shaken by this medical scare. The thing is that there is no empathy in this message. That came a few seconds late. I tab back into Discord and poorly try to tell him that it's okay. I've done the same thing before. Go to the hospital if it's actually more serious than what I experienced, but keep me posted if you can. Thinking this might offer some relief, I guess? It's pretty shabby. I don't know, but I still think in my scramble I hadn't fully taken in what was happening because I was so distracted by 5 different things. Then I got my very deserved.
I don't fucking know, man. I think it's very worrying how you're more worried about when I'll get on over something that could have cost me my life. Good looks.
I don't blame him for saying this. He had every right to be mad as well as scared, but I do think it's very important to know this was not actually a situation where he could have lost his life or anything. It's more like a Schrödinger scenario where he didn't know if he was in danger or not, and understandably so. Overdose is a word taken very seriously for good reason, right? But it's not invisible like a mental condition. It can be determined if you were ever at risk or not, and ibuprofen is so common and so well known, I knew. Finding that the loud crash you heard downstairs at night was actually just your cat isn't almost a home invasion, no matter how scared you were that it might be. Wist wasn't allergic to it. He takes 800 milligrams. Wist, I don't think you're a knucklehead for being scared in this moment. People should be cautious with medicine. Ultimately though, this was a very tame misuse of an over-the-counter drug.
Anyways, I called my mom. She said I would be all right, so give me like 5 minutes and I'll be on.
So like that, the panic was over. I truly did feel bad that I made a major fool of myself to Wist. I should have given him my undivided attention and consideration the second he said something serious was up and not let my thing cloud my decisions. And for that, I am very sorry, Wist. That was really uncool and disrespectful. I think about that slip up every once in a while and the words "my worst mistake since" just always come to mind.
I'd hate for all of this to be planned out just for a stupid mistake that I made to ruin it all. Yes, I made a mistake, but the way that I had been responded to was completely inappropriate.
True, I blame myself for the handling of the situation. In the time that I was messaging Wist, people in the game were asking, what's going on? What's Wist saying? And sometime after this message, I was relieved that there wasn't a real medical issue and said something like, he thought he overdosed on headache meds, but I don't think he realized that a little extra ibuprofen won't kill you. And people probably giggled at that because they were awaiting this potential tragedy and then it was a false alarm, a mistake. Some are saying that we laughed behind his back for overdosing and going to the hospital before this recording, so I need to make it clear, this is a totally dramatized version of the story and goes against what Wist said in his own video. Was it in great taste? Not really, but it wasn't funny that he overdosed, it was funny that he didn't and everyone thought something was really wrong. I think I said to the cast that I kind of screwed up in responding to him, but I didn't make it clear that Wist was very shaken by all this.
5 minutes later, I would join the game and immediately be made fun of for almost overdosing. Someone said, isn't he the guy that almost overdosed? Only for someone else to laugh?
I'll take accountability on behalf of who said this because even though the joke was in questionable taste, I can imagine from the perspective of the cast, given what little I said, they'd hear, okay, Wist is getting on, and assume, cool, he's come to his senses, we're back on track. This was just a silly little hiccup. The situation wasn't taken seriously because it was determined nothing serious was happening, but it was the lack of respect that was the issue. This next chunk of the story is probably the most iffy, so just bear with me. After he leaves, I'm left to really soak up what happened and fully process it now that things were finally at a standstill. I was very late to give the apology that was owed. I really did have a cringing facepalm moment after sending this notorious message. But now I was thinking to myself, I might have really screwed up a lot worse than I thought. I might have been wrong about what was happening. I was right about the ibuprofen, but I was really second guessing myself and overcompensating for how late I was to give this apology that should have been in place of this message. I know what you're thinking, and I'm sure the stakes of my project were in my head, but I really was sorry about my reaction, and that was the bigger priority. Still, looking at this makes me wince.
I said you were having a medical issue with something you took, which I shouldn't have shared, but at the same time, I didn't want them to think you were holding everyone up for no reason. The person that made the joke would eventually apologize in DMs to me. I never responded to this because I did not believe that the cast was not made aware of how severe the situation was.
Yeah, this part is vague and gray, I have to admit. I did tell the cast that Wist was having a medical issue and that he took something, but after it was realized that he wasn't in harm and it was to diffuse the tension of everyone waiting to hear what was up. I wasn't gonna disclose his medical emergency until it was known that it was a false alarm, so keep that in mind. The cast's introduction to what was up with Wist was that.
How do I join immediately to someone saying, isn't that the guy that almost overdosed? That told me they knew, but they did not care.
This is why I should have quoted myself instead of describing what I said, because the word overdose was definitely used. It's not that nobody took overdosing seriously, it's that there was no overdose and that's all they knew. What I didn't tell them was how much this shook Wist. Pretty hairy miscommunication, and I blame myself for lacking clarity rather than Wist. With his context, everything he's saying checks out. It is no wonder Wist is so convinced. I would be too. Still, I promise you that the people in the cast aren't so villainous that they'd laugh in the face of someone who they actually believed was in the danger that Wist thought he was.
On top of that, another cast member would go on to tell me that the cast were making comments such as, okay, this is too much, or I should be more tolerant. It's less so Bakon saying this stuff, even though he still is, and mainly Aaron. Everyone else has been largely silent on the matter.
Everyone had been held up for hours by this point, knowing that this situation was just a scare that had been ruled out quite a while ago now. People reasonably expected we were moving forward like nothing happened because to them, nothing happened and this was just a funny mistake. This is why when Wist is still refusing to join well after, people are starting to get impatient. They don't get the full picture.
All of this to be planned out just for a stupid mistake that I made to ruin it all.
This is where their heads are at. This is what it must look like from their point of view. If I were in Wist's shoes, which I had been, the second I realized I was worrying about nothing, I'd probably laugh it off, and I think that's the kind of tone I gave to the cast. However, not everyone has the same response. In my high-stress rush to get everything sorted, I didn't consider that before shooting him my message. And that's why this situation is a matter of empathy. People in the cast are likely thinking, okay, we all know there was no crisis. Why isn't he acting like it yet? You might think that I'm speaking on behalf of Aaron when I say people thought this, said that, but with complete honesty, I don't think it's truthful to single out Aaron the way this other cast member did. Not naming other names, but I know Aaron was not a lone voice at all. This isn't Wist's fault because it's just what was reported to him, but Wist does mention earlier that he had left Aaron on terrible terms back in the day. I go as far back with Aaron as I do Wist, and I also fell out with Aaron back then. I don't know what Wist's situation with him was, but it is true that when we were still kids, Aaron was very emotional and dramatic, so it was probably over some scenario that arose around that. I eventually crossed paths with Aaron again, and I would say he's definitely grown out of that.
When I heard him say he says he might have overdosed, I was thinking, okay, don't tell me we're still going ahead with this. I think out of everyone there, I had most to lose by this being delayed, and somehow everyone else did not process that you were likely undergoing a medical emergency. Bakon said that he had gone through this before and said he got it out fine, and applied that experience to this situation. This is when I was able to confirm that he lied, because not only was the overdose joke a dead giveaway, but also this cast member's claim of Bakon saying he says he might have overdosed. That's two people knowing about this potential overdose without me mentioning it to anybody at all except for Bakon.
Well, this quote would have come from here in the timeline, where I second guess myself and consider I was wrong about everything. Like, what if Wist took a different kind of medicine? What if I read his messages wrong? It turned out that he didn't and I didn't, but I did say this stuff to the cast, but the worry faded after we realized again, no, nothing was wrong. So when Wist says,
this is when I was able to confirm that he lied.
This information isn't actually incongruent, because this is me talking about what I said prior to him joining in response to him leaving, and this is said after he leaves and I doubt myself. Unless a part of the same sentence where I say, he thought he overdosed on headache meds? A little extra ibuprofen won't kill you. Because I did not disclose the situation until that moment that I knew he was gonna be fine, but even if I did, they all knew well in advance that it ended up being a false alarm before he joined, so the case that they just didn't care for his life is nothing.
When his mention backfired, Bakon just straight up lied to me.
You remember Wist considering he might have to go to the hospital when he initially told me what happened? Here I am really telling him that the cast had no context around how much of a scare this was to him before his mom told him he was fine. They did not know his thoughts and fears before this was said. There isn't really much to say that I haven't already said in this next bit. Yeah, I'm a bit of a weirdo because I asked if he wanted us to start without him and then insisted he play anyways. Patching in a new cast member wasn't as simple as asking a new guy. In hindsight, I should have realized that this had been way too much of a disaster to keep pushing, but I guess I had a lot riding on it.
All I can tell you is that I'm conflicted, but once again, for the 5th time, you can just record without me and write my character out, since I'm holding up the season.
You might think I'm splitting hairs, but this reads as I'm not going to do this recording so you can put my character's lore onto someone else, and I don't want to appear in this project in any way, shape, or form. This is a solution, not an order. This must have been my interpretation because I didn't even recall this message until this video, so it likely wasn't in mind when I later did what you already know if you've seen Wist's video.
Yeah, just count me out. I'm pretty upset about how I've been treated throughout this entire situation.
True and fair.
Bakon would then tell me that he canceled the season. He would not cancel it. That was another lie. I was kicked from the server.
I remember this well. I felt pretty defeated because this was the only day that worked for everyone for the rest of the year, basically, but the cast felt pretty bad about what happened and committed to making this work the next day, and it did work because the only cast member that wouldn't be able to do this left.
August 29, 2022, Bakon would send an apology. Hey, Wist, the situation should have ended here, privately.
In terms of drama, everything beyond this point was new to me. Genuine surprise. Now, how could that possibly be?
The reason I'm making this video is because I just learned a couple of days ago that Bakon decided to mock me in the official release of the season. My Minecraft skin appears in the season.
And then this year is a little rapscallion.
I'm not getting you either.
I did not want any association with the season anymore after my final message.
I already went over this here, so you already know. If you've seen Wist's video, you're definitely still doubting me, but we're getting to it.
Ironically enough, who else but Aaron would have a voice line right after the camera pans over to me?
I'm not getting you either.
Like I've said, I'm sure Wist believes everything he said, but this is in fact not a voice line. This came from the raw recording.
This year is a little rapscallion.
I'm not getting you either.
Now you might think, well, why'd you focus on Aaron saying that? And the answer is that I'm not really sure why Aaron is being focused on at all. I am sure he just said this because the player in the cage is waving at him, and that's just what Aaron would say.
When you skip to 12 minutes and 19 seconds into the episode, I feel like the vision becomes a lot clearer.
Weasel broke the rules, crawled through vents, carried contraband, conspired against us, but most importantly, left their squad for dead. And for that, there is punishment. Let this be a lesson not to be an evil moron.
Firstly, I'll get what you're thinking out the way. It's Minecraft, who cares? It's not the fact that it's Minecraft that makes me upset, it's the meaning behind it. After seeing all the evidence that I've laid out throughout this entire video, you're meaning to tell me that Bakon calling me a weasel, a backstabber, and a team ditcher isn't supposed to mean anything?
Okay. Yes, I mean to tell you that this isn't supposed to mean anything. I have received so many comments shaming me for creating this scene to mock Wist for overdosing and ruining my Minecraft series by killing him with a splash potion of ibuprofen. Let's turn our attention to these messages months before we ever recorded. The potion and the being a meanie butthead, both preconceived.
Why did it need to be my skin in particular?
So why did this character become Wist? First of all, his skin was the only unused prisoner one at the time, and it might have been changed in post, but you know what I found? Time heals. In the year after the recording, he'd post videos, I'd comment on them like I do with anyone who I know, and he'd like or heart them. I felt that even though we'd gone our separate ways again, we were cool. I put a lot of work into the series, so I wanted as many of my friends, past and present, to have a part. I think it's fun. I think it shows I value the person. You might think, how is this valuing a person? This is mean as hell. First of all, yeah, it's fictional, but from my honest point of view, I thought if Wist saw the video, he'd think that was kind of dope, because I never made the connection that the already planned scene could have been taken this way. People say the mocking thing is just a crazy thing you do, and I read these comments agreeing. That really would be insane. 2 people in my life have overdosed and died between recording this project and now. If I recognized this as an overdose joke, I would not have used Wist's skin.
If this was just gonna be a small little cameo or a little mention, I wouldn't have been so enraged to make this video.
What a perfect example of dramatic irony. This scene being an allegory for overdose was something I only found out about 2 weeks ago from someone else.
Why is the one of, if not the only black man there, put behind bars being called a weasel and humiliated as a white guy in a cop suit throws potions of harming at him, killing him?
Yeah, so some people are calling me racist. I don't think I have to say much about this because you already know the intricacies of how a black character ended up in this scene. It's a story based in a prison, keep in mind. It's not a crazy conspiracy, I promise. Also, this captain is a person of color.
Why didn't the other cast member who left the season alongside with me get a depiction like this?
The other dude actually was sort of integrated further down in the series. This is a minor silent character, but I actually made his skin and no one would get get the reference. Yeah.
Why couldn't you just write me out and wrote out the other cast member's character entirely? Why did I have to stay in the season?
I just thought you were pretty neat. In post-production, I thought it was cool to pay homage to 2017. I remember those times fondly. I remember you fondly. That's about it. You already know my stance on the rest of the video, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but I did want to point out one thing.
I want you to take down that video or re-upload it to not include me.
I understand a lot of you guys, but those of you who accused me of hiding the episode because I was afraid of backlash are knuckleheads. I know you're not even hearing this because clearly you didn't even make it to the end of Wist video, but damn, you kinda silly. Like I said at the beginning, I immediately headed for the airport after this video was posted on 9/11, never forget, and was out of the country for a couple weeks. All I could do was reply to comments, and some of you saw that. Keep in mind, I hadn't seen Wist's video and was recounting everything from memory, which after seeing this video probably explains a lot about my perspective answering those, but I also think it adds some authenticity to my responses. I could not answer everything in a single comment. I was probably in a pub. I think my initial reaction to Wist's video dropping speaks to how different our point of views are. On my way to the airport, I was of the mind that Wist was holding on to the overdose situation from 2 years ago and waiting for Cosmic Crime to blow up to expose me. I thought, joke's on him, it only got 7 views. So he posted this conveniently after this video really took off. I thought, I'm not gonna respond to some drama monger, but after talking to some people, reading comments, and thinking it over, I realized Wist really thought all these things I was hearing about, so I owe him a response. When I finally watched his video, there was zero doubt that he was being honest. There's a part I almost forgot to mention.
If it's also true that the season was recorded the day after this incident, did nobody in the cast truly believe that this was insensitive in any way?
In the raw recording, I was supposed to splash Wist with the potion and do the monologue, but I actually made a silly mistake.
Thanks, Bakon.
Yeah.
Bacon, you just got thrown over here.
Whoa!
Whoa!
There was one over
Genuine accident. I actually didn't mean to do that. For real, guys, deadass, I did not mean to do that. So I did the scene in post like it was supposed to be, but nobody saw it until the release 2 years later. For the fans, I want to say that I almost made a video about why Cosmic Crime stopped a few months ago, so I'll squeeze it in here quickly. I had every episode mostly finished to the point where I could do what was left in a week's time. This meant I could start releasing Cosmic Crime sooner and complete it as I went. Unfortunately, Cosmic Crime was butt cheeks, so my motivation for these deadlines got stinky, and I procrastinated until I barely squeaked it out only for it to get... It was starting to really consume me, but not even in a cool way, and was costing me other important things in my life, so I made the easy decision to pull the plug. For now, at least. Thanks a million to the few people that did support the project, though. Y'all made it worth it. Thanks for listening. I hope this helps.